from Macon, Georgia. You want to introduce your posse from Macon?
Sure. My name is Tabitha Walker, and I'm with the Macon Film Group. This is Stephanie Shadden and Terrell Sanford.
I'm right back here.
We are fairly new, Macon, to the film world. We are very open and willing to talk to anybody that is interested in shooting some projects in Macon. We have a wide scope of locations, from older homes to old baseball fields and just about everything. And at this point, thankfully, we're fairly permit free, and because the community hasn't had a lot of film work there, they're willing to open just about anybody. So if you have any questions about Macon, please come find us. And welcome to listen.
David Roach, do you guys, you shoot in Australia. Do you guys have like film commissions?
We do. We have film commissions in each state of Australia, and in each city, everything is different. I mean, I wish we had a film board like you guys have here in Savannah. In Sydney, it's very difficult. I mean, everybody films there, but each different suburb, really, or county of the city has a different policy, and so you're dealing with different people all of the time.
Oh, man.
The film that we shot, Beneath Hill 60, it was a $10 million film. It's a World War I film, but we knew when we had the budget that we couldn't possibly do a World War I film for $10 million. It was just, we knew that. And so what we did, we went into a community which is about the size of Savannah. It's called Townsville. The last production that was there was Spielberg's The Pacific. It was shot in that sort of region in Queensland. But apart from that, they didn't have any experience at all with film crews being up there. And as you said, you know, you were implying that they didn't have an experience with film crews up there, so they were open to having film people in their homes, in their district. They didn't have the experience of having, you know, film crews destroy anything. And I think that's sort of telling, because what happens is that I always think that it's an easy thing to get a favour. You know, it's actually pretty easy to ask somebody to borrow their house or to borrow, you know, their area to film in. That's not a difficult thing. The problem comes after that, when somebody's doing you a favour and suddenly you want to extend that favour. You're paying somebody $1,000 a day, you know, to use their house, and suddenly, you know, you want it for the weekend, but then suddenly, because everything changes in film, suddenly you want it for 5 days. You know, that's $5,000. They're going to be happy about that. But if you're paying them nothing, it's difficult. So my policy is always you work out that favour as a transaction. You know, what does that person want? How can that person benefit from you being there? And it's a skill that you need right from the start of your filmmaking career, but right through doing films, you know, $10, $20 million films, because you're always going to be asking for favours and asking for volunteers. And I'll just give you one little example with my film. When we went to Townsville, we were looking for, because it was World War I, we were looking for no man's land, like an area of 20 or 30 acres, or almost 100 acres really, of dead flat area that we can completely obliterate, take all the grass off and turn into a war zone. Somebody told us about a farm which was about an hour out of town. We went out there and turns out the farm was perfect. It was absolutely flat. You couldn't see any gum trees. There was a lot of kookaburras, which we could get rid of, but you couldn't see any of the gum trees. So we went to the farm and we told him the story of the film, and we said, so what do you want? We said, we would like your farm, please. And he said, how long for? We said, about 2 months. He said, what do you want to do with it? We said, well, we want to burn all the grass off, and we want to dig about 2 miles of trenches in your paddocks. He said, I've got to talk to my wife. So we went in and talked to his wife, and he came out. It was only about 10 minutes later, he came out and said, you can have it on 2 conditions. The first condition is you don't pay me anything. And we said, right? Apparently he had a tax problem. He runs this little earth moving company, and he had a tax problem, so he didn't want to have money coming into his company. So that was fantastic. And we said, what's the second condition? He said, the second condition is that I want to do all the earth moving myself. And he did all of the earth moving with all of his men for nothing. So we got the whole of that area for free. Now, which is just a fantastic outcome for us. But what do you do with somebody like that when they don't want money and they're doing you this huge favour? What we did, he had a family of 3 kids and his wife. What we did, I set up this situation where we had somebody who was on point the whole time, and we welcomed them onto the set the whole time. And any time their kids or their his wife or himself came onto the set, we would have somebody introduce them to the crew. They could be a part of any of the departments. And on top of that, we gave him a part in the film. He has a small speaking role in the film. He says that experience of us being there was the best experience of his life. And that's an example of a transaction that works for both parties.
I think it's a really good point of what you're saying about extending the favor or being careful of how you do it. Law and Order in New York City is infamous for never shooting in the second place, going back to the next place, because they destroy it. They destroy it, and they're usually ending up having to pay damages, and people just know. Someone calls from Law and Order, we really like your building, just hang up. Just hang up. And that's not a reputation you want to get, especially when you're starting out. You may need a reshoot. My first film, a guy that I used to drink at his bar, he gave me the bar for almost the entire day. In fact, it was late opening up. Our artistic director did not like the way the bottles were set up behind the bar. She needed to change them around for color patterns. And I went, all right, just take the Polaroids and, move them around. And then when you're all done, put them back. Went through the whole shoot, wrapped everything up, heading up. My phone rings a little bit later. It's the owner. He's like, what did you do to my bar? Because my bartenders can't find any of the alcohol. Because the bartenders are used to just grabbing where the bottles are, and she had put, like the whiskey on the top level. And then when we needed to do a little reshoot, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He goes, you guys caused me a lot of trouble.
David, where did you shoot Love Ludlow?
We shot that in my hometown and got all the locations for free. The only locations we could not get for free was a laundromat, because apparently they make a sizable amount of dough in towns, and the cemetery, because apparently people are dying to get in. It's amazing. A lot of cemeteries charged for shooting.
Did you build the set?
Well, for the main set was a Queens Railroad apartment. And again, our budget was so low we could not afford to rent a Queens Railroad apartment for a month. Or, the more expensive thing is paying the neighbors not to turn on their radios while we're shooting. That's the other thing New York's a little infamous for, is when you're shooting in a building, all of a sudden the vacuum's going next door, and then people come out and they're like, I'm sorry, is there noise?
There's such a thing called New York calls, where you say cut for action, and you say action for cut.
Yes.
So that the public will actually reverse.
Oh, absolutely. But also we have PAs with cash walking around, and if someone's causing